The bloody video horror that made me puke on My Aunt Gertrude is one of the more infamous productions to have emerged from the shot-on-video underground. Right off the bat, I can tell you that it's infamous for a myriad of reasons. Not only because it's shot and edited completely on video, which sadly is an almost instant turn-off for many viewers, but also because of its misleading title. I hate to spoil this early on in the review, but yes, what you may have heard about this film is mostly true. Sure, the movie is light on the red stuff. Sure, there is no Aunt Gertrude, and sure, there's only a little bit of puke throughout the film's runtime. Even I've brushed it off in the past as a piece of garbage without really giving it a fair shot. But despite all of the criticism it gets, I decided to give the movie another chance. And I actually came out kind of enjoying it. So now I'm going to explain why. New Jersey-based filmmaker Zachary Winston Snygg, known professionally as John Bacchus and a handful of other names, is the director responsible for this ambitious, if inept, cinematic opus. As his career progressed, Zachary went on to direct various low-budget softcore pornographic spoofs and silly urban-themed monster horror comedies such as
Bloods vs. Wolves
and
Vampires.
Keep in mind, this was around the same time that fellow New Jersey-based contemporaries Wave Productions rose to prominence with their unique brand of independent filmmaking. But porn aside, as a teenager, Zachary used to shoot zero-budget amateur films with his friends. One example of his early works worth noting was the similarly tongue-in-cheek, if crass, title, The Heaping Bouncy Breasts That Smothered a Midget. Right off the bat, it's evident that Zachary and his friends had a specific vision in mind for their productions early on. Despite being shot on the ultra-cheap with very limited resources, the group of young filmmakers, under the name Stage Crew Video, were not afraid of breaking the budgetary chains that bound them, and the result was a funny and fairly creative attempt at telling an entertaining story. But I know what you're thinking, dear viewer. Heaping bouncy breasts aren't the focus of today's video, now are they? Without further preamble, let's dive into the subject of today's video, which I will call the bloody video horror for the sake of brevity. The bloody video horror has an ambitious and admittedly compelling, if confusing, story. A man named Hassan rents a VHS camera from his local mom-and-pop video store, and past this masterpiece of an opening credit sequence, the movie wastes no time explaining his motives. Hassan is borrowing the camera to shoot a horrific snuff film in which he mercilessly executes his conveniently buck-naked victim. He later returns the camera to the store, much to the apathy of the film's protagonist, a disgruntled clerk named Ramon, whose dream job is to become a detective. After cleaning up all the evidence, Hassan calls his camera operator to explain his motive for filming the murder, which we learn is to sell to a black market distributor in either South America or South Africa, depending on the line reading. Shortly after, Hassan tries to locate the tape to ship it off to said benefactor, when he suddenly makes a horrifying discovery. He forgot to take the tape out of the camera before returning it to the store. He immediately rushes to town to receive the tape before the store closes, but unfortunately, it's too late. The tape was instead collected by Ramon's waffling, neurotic boss, who is none the wiser to the tape's contents, and who also owes big money to a corrupt cop, who is also a shady loan shark. Man, there's so many layers to this story. Shortly after discovering the gruesome footage, Ramon's boss is suddenly visited late into the evening by none other than Hassan, who swiftly murders him before the news about the snuff tape can get out. Upon losing his job and his boss, it's now up to Ramon to solve the mystery behind his boss's sudden homicide, and he ends up getting caught in a bloody web of lies and double crossings in the process. The bloody video horror was shot in 1989 and is an amateur film in every sense of the word. I don't mean to disparage independent and amateur creators, especially those whose works I've given positive reviews, but when I say the bloody video horror is an amateur film, I really do mean it's an amateur film. The camera work, while inventive and even reminiscent of the Coen brothers and Sam Raimi at times, is often shaky or out of focus, and the editing and the sound mix are poor as well. The costumes are a joke and don't really disguise the fact that most of the characters are played by the same 3 or 4 people. The few special effects we see are laughable, and there's even visible equipment throughout the movie. There are also a handful of fairly dull moments where the camera and the dialogue linger for far longer than they need to, especially in the various interrogation scenes throughout. And lastly, the plot gets more and more convoluted as the movie progresses, with what feels like almost too much happening, including new characters being introduced who don't get enough time to be fleshed out, and a lot of the plot elements feel like they really just go nowhere. But in spite of all of these limitations and all of these shortcomings, this movie still managed to pull through and entertain me. It's far from a masterpiece, but it was still worth checking out at least once. Some of the dialogue by the characters is witty and amusing. Most of the performances are so spectacularly bad that they're almost guaranteed to make you laugh. And on top of that, the ending of the film is one of the most hilariously inept attempts at a climax I've ever seen. And in spite of receiving harsh criticism over the years from viewers and critics, the movie still manages to get people talking, so surely it holds at least some value. Speaking of which, the original VHS release of the Bloody Video Horror by Video Outlaw is a highly sought-after tape. Despite being somewhat easily found online nowadays, this original physical release had become so sought after, in fact, that it even warranted a limited reissue on VHS in the early 2020s, courtesy of Saturn's Core Audio and Video. Even if for no reason other than to down a few beers and watch funny, stupid Z-grade schlock with your friends, the Bloody Video Horror is a VHS spectacle that's worth checking out at least once for any seasoned shot-on-video enthusiast. And well, that's all for today's review. If you like this video, make sure to stay tuned for more reviews in the future. And as always, thanks for watching everybody. This is Michaela, signing off.